was young and vibrant and loving, caring, and had so much potential to go so many different ways in life. Indigenous men are missing or murdered every day, and you never hear about it on the news.
There's days where I attend the marches, I attend the memorials, and I don't understand why nobody seems to be putting this at a higher level of grave concern.
We're so remiss sometimes that men don't want to talk, or men want to hold back their feelings or emotions. When we talk about our Indigenous brothers, when we talk about victims of homicide, and knowing that Indigenous men are at the highest rate of being victims of homicide, where's the supports coming from police? Where's the supports coming from the RCMP? Where is the inquiries delving a little bit more into the stories behind the acts of crime?
Today, I am humbled and grateful to receive this report.
2 years after the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls released its final report, families across the country are calling for another inquiry.
Our men are loved, our men are sacred, and it is about time.
Sometimes those bad options in our lives are there because we just didn't know any other path.
How do you expect somebody to live a good life if they were born to hate themselves because they're brown or because they're Indigenous?
Briar Sati was known to many as a friend, a brother, and a son. But on a cold winter night in Winnipeg's North End, he was shot and killed. He was just 24 years old. Gina Sati remembers the kind nature of her son.
He was like so cute. I called him my little sack of potatoes. He was the youngest boy. I have 2 boys, and so he was the younger boy. Briar's personality, he was super happy, very outgoing, spontaneous, very kind, loving. He loved to help people. He had a big heart.
The two were close and spent a lot of time together.
Every day would be our thing to get up together, doing coffee together, just sitting and talking. And if Briar was down and out or just feeling like he needed somebody to talk to, he would tell me, "I need your wise words, Mom." That I really took pride in because, it's not every day that, especially a boy or a young man, can open up like that.
Prajishnik Sati had planned to celebrate his partner's birthday on February 7th, 2017.
He had went out and with his girlfriend for her birthday, so he had popped in the house after they had went out for some drinks. He came in quickly and he left. He was in a good mood, he was happy, jumped back in his cab, and that was the last time I seen him.
But the following morning, he didn't return home, and Sati knew something wasn't right.
My other son, Nathan, phoned me at about 9 o'clock. He's like, "Mom, where the hell's Briar?" I was like, "What do you mean? He should be at work." He goes, "I'm at work," because they work together. He's like, he's not here. So then I started really getting worried because that wasn't like my son. I got a phone call, and the person on the other end introduced himself as homicide. I just started punching myself because I didn't think it was real. I wanted to hit myself because I wanted to see if I was up. Like, was this real? Am I breathing? Am I hearing what I'm hearing? I completely lost it.
Prajiznik Sethi had briefly stopped into a North End home on his way to work.
So when Briar went in there, he was like, oh, there's that, I think he said goof, that pushed me around. I should slash him up or something. But Briar had no weapons on him. And he was walking out the door. And that girl woke Christopher Brass up, and he leaned down and pulled it out of his sock and shot. He emptied the clip in that gun. And 2 bullets hit my son.
The 3-week trial by jury found Christopher Brass guilty of second-degree murder. After the death of her son, Sethi moved back to her home community in Saugeen First Nation.
For a while, I was stuck in a really dark hole, and I was using all the wrong things. Today, I'm trying to do whatever I can to make sure that I stay above water and, keep doing positive things and living life positive.
For her, that meant organizing an annual walk to memorialize the Indigenous men and boys who have lost their lives to violence.
I was still in school at the time, and I needed to do something for him.
She also lays tobacco down and prays for her son in her home community.
He was young and vibrant and loving, caring, and had so much potential to go so many different ways in life.
So what do you think can be done to address some of the issues that Indigenous men and boys are facing?
Well, I think there should be an inquiry. Indigenous men are missing or murdered every day. It's like, society doesn't care. How do you expect somebody to live a good life if they were born to hate themselves because they're brown or because they're Indigenous?
An APTN investigation identified more than 600 missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys across the country. 18 homicides were a result of domestic abuse, and 63 homicides have gone cold. Newspaper articles, partial police databases, and public family statements were used to identify the men. The majority of the men identified are from the prairie provinces, and the average age was just 31 years old. But academics believe that number is likely much higher.
A more holistic inquiry that includes all the Indigenous people would provide some new insights.
University of Saskatchewan professor John Hansen studies the issue. He says stereotypes contribute to the growing number of missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys.
All of these stereotypes really desensitize Canadians. The basic structure is there, the racist stereotypes that devalue Indigenous men and boys, and it devalues Indigenous women. It's all very connected with the colonial system. As a result of being bombarded with these stereotypes of Indigenous inferiority, Indigenous people internalize them. We do know that where there is poverty, there is crime. And the colonial system purposely impoverishes Indigenous people and keeps them in a cycle in which you can't get out of that.
According to Statistics Canada, Indigenous males are 7 times more likely to be murdered than non-Indigenous males, and are 3 times more likely to be murdered than Indigenous women. The homicide rate for Indigenous males reached its highest count in 2014, and in 2020, 81% of all Indigenous homicide victims were males. Carl Banman was just 31 years old when he went missing in 2011. He was last seen leaving a house in Morden, Manitoba during the early morning hours of May 22nd. His mother, Sandy Banman, says the pain of losing him still comes in waves.
He was a very quiet child. He was very well behaved. He was a beautiful boy. He was also extremely funny. He had a sense of humor that, just, always be laughing and joking around. And he liked scary movies, so we'd watch scary movies. And, if there was lightning storms, we would go outside all the time to watch the lightning in the sky. And he was a people person, and he enjoyed life. He actually moved out to Saskatchewan. He fell in love out there, met a girl. He came back for a visit, and he spent a week with me, and then he went back to Morden, where his father resides. And during that visit is when he lost his life. There's days where I attend the marches, I attend the memorials, and I feel like hurt. Like, what about my son?
The Beat It Tie campaign was an initiative that we sought out here at the Dakota Ojibwe Child and Family Services as part of the ongoing dialogue to support new narrative, or at least the ongoing narrative in support for our murdered and missing Indigenous men and boys.
Morden, Manitoba, a small town south of Winnipeg. Sandy Banman grew up in the rural community. She says that experience shaped how she would later parent her own children.
We had a very amazing family in the sense of love and laughter and just small town life. There was just one thing missing, and that was my roots. I knew I was something different inside of me. I met my birth mother when I was 28, and it turned out to be a beautiful relationship. I was quite a surprise when I came back because my birth family was never told about me, so they didn't know I existed. So when I returned to her, she welcomed me into the family and introduced me to my other brothers and sisters, and so that was quite a shock.
As a baby, Sandy was adopted out to a non-Indigenous family. Her experience is widely known as the 60 Scoop.
This is a special adoption program. The provincial government feels that
the practice of placing Indigenous children into mainly white homes. Thousands of Indigenous children were taken, and government-funded programs targeted them.
This trend is causing us real concern. While we have had reasonable success in placing white children for adoption, we have had great difficulty in placing Indian and Métis children.
Is Peter too young to have an aim in life?
The Adopt Indian Métis Center advertised in newspapers. They also ran commercials on local television channels.
Believe the dividends. AIM is a plan that grows on you. All our children aim to invest.
Many children were taken across the border into the United States. Some never returned, and the families were left to grieve. Banman knows the experience through and through.
I was very lonely in my own self. No matter how much love I got, there was just something so deeply missing inside of me that I had to go and search for what that was.
Her birth mother was a residential school survivor, and Banman was apprehended soon after she was born, an experience she says never left her. And when her son went missing, it tore the family apart.
I got a message on that May 22nd during the day that Carl had not returned home that morning and was not seen by evening time, and I became extremely concerned. Then the police started really searching everywhere. They were searching the woods, and everyone knew he was missing. It's a smaller community, so people are aware. I would take a different bus every day, put up posters. I would walk around and just shake hands with people, go to Salvation Army and put up posters and ask people, have you seen my son? And so the morning of that last search, I heard nothing from my children. And that began to worry me. As a mother, I already knew. But I started to look on Facebook, and I seen my daughter stating that she was going for a meeting at town hall. And so I knew right away something was really wrong now. It was 3 weeks. It's an eternity when you're looking for someone you love. Sleepless nights and just the trauma you cannot imagine.
Carl's body was found in Dead Horse Creek, just outside of Morden.
They could not identify him because of the water. They would not let us see his body. There was only his one tattoo. He had one tattoo, and it was right here. It was the nickname I had given him when he was small. I think it's like a falsehood that we believe that our men are strong, our men can take care of themselves, our men are okay. And nobody realizes what's really happening with our men.
For years, Sandy has advocated for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
I'm very, very happy that there's such awareness created. I helped fight for that awareness.
She says now is the time to pay closer attention to Indigenous males. She says Indigenous men have been left out of the conversation.
But there's days where I attend the marches, I attend the memorials, and I feel like hurt. Like, what about my son? And I don't understand why nobody seems to be putting this at a higher level of grave concern. It's shocking to me, but maybe it's because my son has passed away as a result of violence. But I think there's more people that feel that way.
She walks for missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys every year on Father's Day, and ties neckties throughout the city to honor the men and boys who have lost their lives.
What about all our sons? What about our nephews? What about our fathers? What about our uncles, grandfathers? Like, they're just as sacred.
Jason Gobet says he sees how harmful stereotypes can be to Indigenous men.
We often get characterized in different areas, right? Oh, scary, long hair. What do? I should take my stuff to the other side of the street. But we often forget that we're people as well, too.
Gobet leads a men's group outside of Brandon, Manitoba, through Dakota Ojibwe Child Family Services.
I didn't know exactly what he was asking for.
I'm happy to experience with this group for a long time and raise back to my old roots and when I was a kid.
It made me feel good. And to be out in the land, just to get connected with Mother Earth, I found a lot of men do that.
Well, any opportunity that we can gather with our men, especially in a safe space, and open ourselves to sit in that circle and to share our openness. And sometimes it's one of those things that we really have an opportunity to open our heart.
My week has been a very productive week. It's been good. Things have been happening really well for us.
When we were done skinning the animal, we loaded it up in the truck and then we went back.
We're so remiss sometimes that men don't want to talk, or men want to hold back their feelings or emotions. And one of the things that we found in creating that safe space and that sharing circle is that our men don't see judgment. Our youth are looking for that same thing we all look for in community, and that's to be a part of something bigger.
Gobet sources local Indigenous artists to bead neckties to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous men.
So the Beaded Tie campaign was an initiative that we sought out here at Dakota Ojibwe Child and Family Services as part of the ongoing dialogue to support new narrative, or at least the ongoing narrative in support for our murdered and missing Indigenous men and boys.
He hopes to see the narrative around missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys change.
When we talk about our Indigenous brothers, when we talk about victims of homicide and knowing that Indigenous men are at the highest rate of being victims of homicide, where's the supports coming from police? Where's the supports coming from the RCMP? Where is the inquiries delving a little bit more into the stories behind the acts of crime? We're not all driven to do bad things in our lives. Sometimes those bad options in our lives are there because we just didn't know any other path.
Sweet wedge.
Canada has put forward many different models. It's a moving target. They'll try, anything that works. The difference between compounding interest rates and inflation over a 100-year period is truly significant.
We're talking into the billions of trillions of dollars, aren't we?
Certainly billions.
You can't even put a dollar value on that. And that's the unfortunate part, is that you can't put a cultural value. It's priceless.